It is. Oh boy. Every time I sit down here to say what episode it is, I can never figure it out. I really don't know. It might be the 28th. It might not be. It probably isn't. Let's see. It is the 28th. Oh my gosh, I'm right this time. It's the 28th episode of the Running My Mouth podcast. I am your well traveled host, Erin, and allow me to run my mouth for a little bit. So, I say well traveled. I'm hopping right into my topics this time. I say well traveled because listen, I've been to New Orleans plenty of times. Most of those times have been for concerts, but I've still been there plenty of times. But I went again to New Orleans for the Memorial Day 3-day weekend. Last weekend. And like I said in the last episode, I will regale you all with the tales of it. And so I'm going to do that. So I took the train down to New Orleans, for those who don't know, and also for those who live outside of the United States that have better long-distance train travel than the United States. This may surprise you, but for the most part, the US is built around car travel, which sucks if you hate driving like I do. But we do have long distance trains. They don't go very fast at all. In fact, I was surprised. Oh my god. I was surprised to learn that most passenger passenger trains in the US travel at a maximum of 60 miles an hour, which is not fast at all. For some comparison, I looked up, what the Shinkansen, I hope I'm saying that right, the bullet train in Japan, that goes up to I can't remember if it was 200 miles an hour, 200 kilometers. I think it's miles. They're really fast, basically. And they're super pointy, with the super pointy noses so that they don't break the sound barrier. But our long distance trains go not even as fast as a car can go on the interstate. So as a result of that, train travel is not people's first option when it goes to, going somewhere. They're either going to drive or they're going to fly. And unfortunately, I would say if you live in the middle of the country, long distance train travel is more of a novelty. There are better train lines on each of the coasts. I forget the name of the lines, but the West Coast, which is primarily just California and Oregon, has a line that goes all the way up and down the coast. And then on the East Coast, that's built out a little bit more because there are a lot of East Coast cities that, first of all, they're just older. So, when trains were on and popping back in the Victorian era or whatever, all of that infrastructure was built up there a little bit more than it is, in the middle of the country, which I wouldn't even consider Mississippi to be the middle of the country, but it's on a coast. It's not on the coast, though. The Gulf Coast is technically a coast, but, it doesn't have the reputation of the East Coast or the West Coast, unfortunately. But yeah, if you want to travel up and down the East Coast or up and down the West Coast via train, you have a little bit better of an option there. There is technically, I guess, a Gulf Coast line, or I guess there used to be. There isn't really one now, but I always say it's about to open back up. I don't even know when it's opening back up. I think within the next few years, but there used to be a line from New Orleans that went through Mobile and then down the Dingaling of Florida. Why did I call it that? Oh my god. The Panhandle, is that what it's called? You know what I'm talking about. The protuberance of Florida. I don't even know if that part is active or not, but the main line that I'm focused on for the purposes of my travel story is the City of New Orleans line, which I don't know why it's called the City of New Orleans line, considering that is but one stop on the line. and the train goes from New Orleans up to Chicago, um, like every day, and it just goes back and forth from New Orleans to Chicago, and it goes up through Jackson, and we have a train station, but as I kind of found out, the train station is more like it's really a glorified bus stop, to be completely honest, because I mean it's also combined with the Greyhound bus terminal and also the city's bus terminal, which is called the JTran. Um and also they the train station is basically only open when the train like departs and arrives. So the train in Jackson leaves and goes south every day at 11:20 in the morning. And so as a result of that, the train station doesn't open until like 10, or no, 10:30 actually. It doesn't open until 10:30. And if you've never been to a train station before, or maybe you've only traveled, by car or by plane or something like that, um train travel is a lot less involved than plane travel. Which I mean, I never traveled via plane before 9/11, because before 9/11 I was an infant or a fetus, and therefore I wouldn't remember it. Um, but after all of that happened, the security and just the amount of checkpoints that you have to go through in like an airport has made it a very involved process. With trains, that's not really the case, because out of sheer luck, I guess. I mean, outside of Wild West times, there haven't really been any train robberies or heists or anything like that. So I guess they just haven't felt the need to make it an involved process. Which it's a good thing that that hasn't happened. Um, but what ended up happening is that originally I was going to be taking this trip by myself, but my mom and my aunt ended up joining me. And so, being that they are of a certain age, which I mean, I'm like this too. I like to show up, especially at the airport, because like I don't want to miss my flight or anything like that. I want to be basically over prepared when it comes to flying somewhere. So what ended up happening is that we ended up going to the train station at, I want to say, like 9:45 in the morning. They weren't open, and there was nowhere for us to wait. So we had to, and also we got dropped off because I didn't want to pay to park my car for what, like 3 days. So we had to stand in the sun for like pretty much an hour and just wait for them to open the doors, which I mean, that was bad planning on our part, which I mean, I, to be fair, I didn't really bother to see when the train station like actually opened. I just thought, you know, they would be open at like 9 in the morning, but considering again train travel, number one, there's only one train. Well, I guess technically true. There's one that leaves in the morning and one that comes back in the afternoon. So there's not a lot of traffic through this train station. So I guess realistically, why would they be open that early? I don't know. But yeah, we had to wait outside. We had to stand the entire time. There's nowhere to sit because given that this is, Jackson, and it is, you know, there are a decent number of homeless people in Jackson. As a result of that, the more homeless people you have, the more hostile architecture you have. There's no benches outside. There's nowhere to sit. And the train station on the one side of it has basically no shade. And let me tell you, Memorial Day weekend, it was hot with a capital T. Like, oh my God, we were standing in direct sunlight basically for an hour. Pretty terrible, I'm not gonna lie. But eventually, train station opens, we get in there. Like I said, it's not an involved process at all. There's only one train, so it's kind of hard for you to miss it unless you're just like trying really hard. Because I mean, everybody's getting on the same train, so once everybody else starts moving, you can just start moving with them. Went up to the train platform. I don't know why I'm tripping over my words today. That's weird. Go up to the train platform. It's really fun seeing the train arrive, like pull into the station. I posted a video of it on my Instagram stories, which I said I wouldn't be promoting my Instagram all that much here, but You could still follow me there. Jackson Underground, JXN Underground. No underscores or dots or anything like that on Instagram. That's where I post all the sauce. Um, so that was fun. Um, Being on a train, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't do a whole lot of prior research to this. So I didn't even know what the inside of the car was gonna look like. But basically, I would say a train is kind of like a bus where there's like two seats in the row instead of three, like on an airplane. Um, and also, there was so much leg room. Like, I'm a short person anyway, so I've never really had issues with leg room on planes. Like, planes, if you're tall, it's kind of a bad time. But I feel like if you're a tall person, you would love the train because you have so much. I had so much leg room that they have the footrests that come down from the back of the seat in front of you, and my legs couldn't even reach that. So, you know, and they had outlets on the train. The only thing they didn't have, which this might just be this particular line, some of the other train lines might be like slightly nicer. There's no Wi-Fi, but at the same time, the City of New Orleans line runs basically parallel to I-55, and I guess also by extension 51, Highway 51. Um, so I mean, you're gonna have cell reception, except for like in a couple of places where it got kind of spotty. But it would have been nice to have Wi-Fi, or maybe they did, and I just didn't connect to it. But Wi-Fi would have been nice. And another thing that's different about trains versus planes is that they have food. They have a cafe car, and I mean it's not like fancy food or anything like that. It's like sandwiches and hot dogs and burgers, and they're not cooking them, they are microwaving them, but it's hot food on a train. And I mean, already that's like kind of an upgrade to a plane. So, unless, I mean, you're you're traveling long distance on an airplane, they might give you food, but I've never, been on a red eye flight. And also, I think that varies by airline, but this train trip was maybe 4 hours, and you still got to get food and snacks. They also had like smaller things. And also, like, cafe car, you could sit in the cafe area and eat, even though nobody really did. But I will say this, the vibe between taking a train and flying is so, so different. Like, I've flown a few times by now, and in an airport, basically everybody's stressed out. Like, it feels like nobody wants to be there. The people working at the airlines don't want to be there. The people working for the airport don't want to be there. The passengers don't want to be there. They just want to get on their plane and go. But, like, I'm not gonna lie, at the train station, it was like maximum vacation vibes. Like, everyone's chill. I mean, there were like young children and like babies and stuff like that, but that wasn't as grating as it can be on an airplane. You're in a much smaller confined area, and I mean, if you're in an airplane, you can't like walk to another car to get away from a screaming baby. You just have to deal with it, basically. um but they also had the lounge car. So, also another thing is that the train is basically like kind of double decker. So you had a lower area and you had an upper area, and I sat in the upper area. It's a little bit higher up. I mean, it was still a little hard to see the landscape because the landscape in Mississippi, and I guess by extension Louisiana, it's just trees. So, and you do go through some towns and stuff, and I'll get to the stops a little bit later. Um, but it's nice to look out and see stuff in the window. But if you go to the lounge car, it's basically kind of like I don't know how to explain it other than like a viewing platform, but basically they have bigger windows, and they have, since it is, on the top level of the train car, it has like the kind of, it's not a full dome, but it's like rounded viewing windows. The windows are bigger basically, and you can see a lot more. So that was nice. But what I found to be really interesting is that on the way there, the lounge car was like the party car because, you had people on there, sitting in the viewing seats that are facing the windows, looking out. But you also have the seats that are kind of, I don't know how to describe them other than deli style. Like, for instance, if you go to a gas station, that sells food, sometimes they'll have those like deli seats where it's like, the hard compressed wood table and the chairs that are like sloped or whatever. It's like that. It's that vibe. Um, but you had people in there like playing cards. One person had like a Bluetooth speaker and they were playing music through it for like the whole train. Like, and oh my god, on the way coming back, people like had liquor, like just drinking, having a good time with with their liquor and like wine and stuff. And it's like, they're able to do that because I mean, there's basically no restrictions on a train, and it's like, people were drinking. And I mean, people drink on, well, before the pandemic, people drank on airplanes, but, it was a lot less belligerent drunkenness and more just like pleasant buzzedness, I guess. But it was really more of like a very chill atmosphere. And, I could imagine that, a lot of people use airplanes as a means of just like commuting places. So if you're on a plane, you're really just there to get to your destination. But I feel like being on the train is part of the experience. So like it is again more of just like a chill atmosphere. And I also feel like being on a train would be really good for like groups and stuff. And I actually mentioned it to my aunt because next year our family reunion will be held in Memphis and the train goes up to Memphis. So I was like, okay, we got to get all of our folks that are in this area. We got to get on the train and we got to go to Memphis because that is going to be a vibe. Like, oh, that's going to be so fun. Oh my God. So, like, if you have a group of people, I don't know, like a little girls' trip vibe, and you take the train, that could be fun. Um, so yeah, that was the train experience. I also took a bunch of pictures while I was on the train. I took my camera with me. And I decided to take a bunch of pictures while I was actually on the train cuz you go through there are a few stops that you go through from Jackson to New Orleans. So I believe the first one is Brookhaven, which is like an hour's drive south. Um and then after that, I think it's no, the first stop is Hazelhurst, which is I guess equidistant between Jackson and Brookhaven. So it stops in Hazelhurst, and then it stops in Brookhaven, and then it stops in Macomb, and then it stops in Hammond, Louisiana. And then there's not a stop for about an hour and a half until you get to New Orleans, and that's the final stop. Um, so I will say, also another thing that I kind of wasn't expecting, but I don't know what I was expecting the actual train ride to be like, but I will say this: the train was rocking back and forth a lot. And I'm not gonna lie, after hearing about all the train derailments, it was a teeny weeny bit scary. Honestly, no, I'm lying. It wasn't even really that scary. It was just kind of disorienting because you're walking up and down the aisles, and I'm like really trying to not fall on these people in the aisles as the train is literally listing back and forth. Like, and I mean, to be fair, the train's not going that fast. Like, again, the top speed was like maybe 60 miles an hour. But honestly, once you hit New Orleans, or once you get closer to the city of New Orleans, the train slows down to like, it felt like 20 miles an hour we were going. We were crawling through to get to the New Orleans train station. Um, so, the rocking back and forth, it's not that bad. And also, something that I kind of knew this already after hearing about, you know, during all the train derailments and learning about how not great this country's infrastructure is for train travel. Um, the train did have to give the right of way to like a, what do you call it, a commercial train. That was on the way back though. And then also on the way back, we had to stop and wait a little while to let another Amtrak train pass us because I couldn't hear what they were saying. The PA system, it wasn't super great, but I think they said to prevent a derailment, we have to stop and wait for the other train to pass. I don't know. It was them that said that, or if it was like the aunties behind me, like making jokes. But I don't know. Also, when I say aunties, not my aunties. I don't know what happened, but on the way there and back, I ended up on a train car with just like a bunch of black aunties, and they were cutting up in there. It was so funny. Like I was giggling so much to what they were saying. It was great. It was honestly great. So yeah, totally definitely recommend that. traveling via train long distance in a train car full of black aunties. That's great. I love it. Um, and so I guess keeping in with the train travel experience, I'll get to my actual time in New Orleans a little bit later. But on the way back, oh, I will say this. The train is leaving on time. The train said it was leaving at 11:20. We're shoving off at 11:20. Like the train went where it needed to go. And it didn't stop very long at some of the other stations. However, I will say that some of the stations, I can't remember which one specifically it was. I think it might have been Macomb. They're like literally just a platform, and that's kind of it, you know? Which, I mean, it makes sense because realistically, how many people are going to be getting on the Amtrak station, from Hazelhurst, Mississippi to get to New Orleans? Not really a lot. So, but they still, they obviously had to stop there. And, there were people getting on and off, like literally a couple of people getting on and off of those stations. So, like, and also another thing to keep in mind is that, some of the people that were there from greater distances. So some people were coming down from Memphis, some people were coming down from, farther up the line in like Illinois or whatever. So, or however, those people who were coming up from farther up the line, they would have been in the sleeper cars, which I will get to the sleeper cars because my mom had one on the way back. So they would be in the sleeper cars, so you wouldn't really see them anyways, but either way, yeah, some people were getting on and off at the smaller stations. But on the way back, oh, I totally forgot what I was saying. We actually ended up making it there earlier than scheduled. So I think we were scheduled to make it there at 4 something. I can't remember, 4 something in the afternoon. And we ended up getting there at like 3:45 or maybe like right at 4 o'clock. So we ended up getting there faster than anticipated, which I thought that was interesting and also pretty cool. No, I think it was like 3:30 or something like that, because I remember we had to check into our hotel at 4, and I was like, oh, what if they don't have our room ready in time? But ended up being fine. So on the way back, again, the train left on time, okay? But eventually we get to Hammond, and since my mom had a sleeper car going back, I don't know how this works out, but because this didn't end up being the case with my aunt, because she bought her tickets like maybe a few days before we ended up leaving. But the time that my mom bought the ticket, the only tickets available on the way back were the roomette cars, which were like $127, which I didn't even expect her to. I thought she was going to be like, oh man, that's too expensive. Well, I guess we'll do it some other time. But no, she bought it, which I didn't know my mom was balling like that, but hey, good for her, I guess. I don't know. But let me take a sip. This isn't wine, by the way. This is pomegranate juice. And I decided to put it in a wine glass because I like to feel fancy and important. But I realized the other day, to go on a tangent for just a minute, I realized the other day that I'm an adult and I can buy whatever I want. So I bought some pomegranate juice, and today I'm drinking it. And it is refreshing and delicious. Okay, what was I saying? Oh, on the way back, I had gone back to my mom's sleeper car, which actually it wasn't really a sleeper car. It was their roomette, which is basically like 2 seats facing each other in the teeniest, tiniest little room. But there is a bed that like comes down, which I don't even know how you would get into it. I didn't see a ladder or anything like that. And also, I don't know how you wouldn't fall out of it, because like I said, the train was listing back and forth, and the way that it was oriented, you could tumble out of that bed and fall on the floor. I wasn't in there long enough to investigate how you would not fall out of this bed. So I don't know. But they have blankets and stuff there in there, and I wanted to take a nap on the way back because I was tired. So I didn't steal it. I gave it back to them. But I took, which apparently I wasn't even allowed back there, because I tried to go back there again to tell my mom about the thing that I'm about to tell you about. But one of the train attendants stopped me. She was like, actually, only first class people be on this point. And I was like, man, whatever. I'll go back, I guess. So I went back, and so the 2 seats in the room, they like somehow slide in together to make a bed, and then there's the bed that comes down. So you can sleep like two people in there, not comfortably, but you could sleep two people in there. So yeah, and I guess they both have to have a ticket because the lady was not letting. I don't know. I don't even really care. But so I got a blanket from her, and so once we left the station, I played music, and I laid down. The seats recline back pretty far, by the way. In the regular coach seats, they go back pretty far. So I recline my seat back. I wrap myself up in a little Amtrak blanket, which is a pretty decent blanket, by the way. Wrap myself up, close my eyes. So hour and 15 or hour and 30, however long it takes to get to Hammond. Eventually I feel the train stop. I'm like, okay, we're waiting for the train to start again. And after like 10 minutes, or maybe not even as long as 10 minutes, I don't know, it felt like a long time. Also, I was like half asleep, so time, what is that? After a while, I realized that the train isn't moving, so I'm like, what is the holdup? And so I opened my eyes, and the people who are in the seats next to me, they're all crowded around my window looking out. So I'm like, what is going on? And so I see a police officer outside. I'm like, oh my God, is someone getting arrested? But no, I asked the people around me about it, my cavalcade of aunties, and they said that someone had gotten sick. So I was like, oh man, that's unfortunate. And then I realized, we were only in Hammond. We hadn't even really gotten that far. So I was like, oh man, I hope, first of all, the person is like not dead. And also, well, I just didn't really know what was going on. So eventually, first of all, the police were there. Instead of the EMTs, like, what are they gonna do? Shoot the person to life? Like, that's not how that works. So I don't know why the police showed up before the EMTs did, but eventually it was the Hammond Fire Department that came, which, the fire department, they also have EMT training, so it's not, that's whatever. And eventually what do you call it? An ambulance shows up. And so eventually what I find out is that there was a man that had like a seizure in the bathroom, and so they had to make a stop in Hammond to get him off. And I was looking out the window as this was happening. It was a little bit farther down, so I had to like be nosy and go to another train car and look out to see what was going on. But I think the guy, he was fine at the time. He got himself onto the stretcher, so I hope that man is okay. I hope he's doing fine. But yeah, that happened. But despite that happening, and that had to be like a 30-minute delay, we still made it back to Jackson on time. Like, that's crazy. How did we still, and we also had like a couple other delays, because on the way back, that's when we had to, number one, stop for the commercial train car to give that one the right of way, and that was also when we had to stop so that the other Amtrak come by so that we wouldn't derail. But we still ended up making it back on time, which is so crazy. So yeah, that was my train experience. As for the trip, I will say New Orleans, pretty much always great. I love it. I love the city. What can I say? However, again, like I've said, the most of the time that I've been to New Orleans has been for concerts. And so usually I drive there, I get there around, I don't know, whatever time I get there. I stay in my hotel room until it's time to get in line. I get in line, I'm at the show. I leave the show, it's like 10 or 11 o'clock. I go back to my hotel room, I have my little sleepy sleep, and then of course I have to wake myself up before 11 so that I cannot miss checkout, and then I leave. And that's usually all I'm doing in New Orleans. And I was like, I kind of want to spend like a meaningful amount of time down there. So I did, I guess technically 2 full days, because first day was a half day, and then Sunday was a full day, and then Monday we went back, and that was also like a half day. And honestly, I didn't even really do anything, which to me was fine. I wasn't really trying to like get on any river boats or do any swamp cruises, because why am I in a swamp? Like, what? No. So basically what I was doing in New Orleans was just walking around and looking at stuff and also taking pictures. So that was fun. And also, this was supposed to be like my writer's retreat. And I was gonna, so my goals for this retreat that I had was that I wanted to either make significant progress on a screenplay that I already started on, or I wanted to finish or like complete a treatment for an idea that I've had for like a really long time, or I wanted to finish a short that I had started writing like honestly a couple months ago by now. I didn't end up doing any of that because when I devised this writer's retreat, this was before I made Jackson Underground. So it was like, okay, my screenplay stuff would be the only thing that I have to work on. But now that I do have Jackson Underground, at the time, I was still working on my Burning Windsor article, which, by the way, that's up if you want to read it. And at the time, I was really, struggling, number one, to find time to actually write it. And also, number two, struggling to find a way to frame it all. And so by the time the trip came up, I had, most of it, like the majority of it was written, but I didn't have a conclusion. And so I basically spent most of my writing time down there writing the conclusion. And so I ended up being able to finish it, and I published it last Monday morning at 11 o'clock. And so, I got some writing done technically on this writing retreat. Maybe not as much as I would have wanted to, but at the same time, I still felt very reinvigorated while I was down there. So, that ended up working out in a weird way. But yeah, all I did was walk around, sweat so much. It was so hot. And by the way, several podcast episodes ago, I was like, I'm gonna commit to the bit of wearing all black because I'm a metalhead and that's what we do. But that is not smart when you're going somewhere with nothing but sun. I don't recommend it. Do not commit to the bit of wearing all black. Listen, are there ways to like be, an all black wearing person and stay cool? Maybe. I wasn't adhering to any of those. I didn't bring a single hat down with me. That was a tremendous mistake because, it doesn't hurt, but I've had dry skin on my face that I can feel, which is unusual considering it's not the winter. It's it's not even really summer yet, but it's basically summer and it's way humid outside. So like, why is my skin dry? Oh no, did I get sunburned? Maybe. I was wearing sunscreen. I was wearing a moisturizer with SPF. That's not really sunscreen, but I was protecting my face from the sun. However, sunscreen, you gotta reapply it, and I wasn't doing that. And I really hope I didn't get sunburn on my face. It doesn't feel like I did. I have gotten sunburn on my face before, really unfortunately. The last time that I did the golf tournament, which was not last year, but the year before last, I got sunburned like right up in here. Cause again, I was wearing a moisturizer with SPF, only SPF 35, not even really enough. It was 3 or 4 straight days of nothing but sun, and I wasn't reapplying it, so I got sunburned right here by my eyes. It was deeply unpleasant. It like hurt for a while. I don't know if there's like any permanent visual things. I haven't noticed anything anyway. But I'm really hoping I did not get sunburned while I was in New Orleans. However, considering the dryness and flakiness of my skin, despite the fact that it's like 100% humidity outside, I don't know. So don't do what I did. Bring a hat. Don't wear all black. One black article of clothing, fine. All black, not the best idea. And to be fair, I wasn't wearing all black on all days, but it was all dark colors, which again, I don't recommend being out in the sun. That's an easy way to like, I don't want to say die, but if you don't hydrate, you can have a heat stroke and it may or may not kill you. So don't do that, actually. Not a great idea. And bring a hat. Like, I have hats. I don't have, like, the mom on vacation sun hat, unfortunately. My mom sure did, though. She had all of the hats and visors. So, and I mean, to be fair, I didn't really ask for any of them because I thought I would be fine. Plot twist, I wasn't. It wasn't fine at all. It was hot. It was really hot. It was really hot on my face. If I had just a little bit of shade on my face, it might have been fine. I mean, thankfully, I was mostly in like the downtown area, and you got all those buildings, they're shielding you from the sun. So, like, it was mostly fine, but when you're on like I don't know if it's called the Riverwalk area, but the area next to the river, there's basically no shade except for like a cloud rolling by. And thankfully, on Monday, it was pretty cloudy. So while we were out and about, it wasn't as hot as it could be. But Saturday and Sunday, oh my God, it was so sunny. So sunny. And, you know, the good thing about it being very sunny is that all my pictures turned out really nice. Nice and exposed the way I need them to be. But, the unfortunate consequence is that I don't think I got sunburned. I think I might be fine. I think I really might be fine. I don't know. Um, but that's more or less my New Orleans trip. I didn't do very much. Well, as of recording this, I've posted pictures from the train trip onto my Instagram, and I think they turned out fabulously. So if you want to see them, they're there. You can see them. And by the time this goes up on Wednesday, I might have posted my pictures from the actual city, but I don't know yet. I haven't even looked at that. Well, I've looked at them. I just haven't like picked out the ones that I want yet and put them. And also, I'm not gonna lie, this wasn't technically a solo trip, but going on a sort of solo trip, because I wasn't like hanging out with my mom and my aunt the whole time. We pretty much went our separate ways, except for like, you know, going to bed and like eating and stuff like that. Um, but solo trips are not that bad. Which I mean, this isn't new. I've been going places by myself for a really long for I mean what like 2 years now, just about. So it's like this isn't new or unique, but it has reinforced to me that it is pretty dope and that I do like it kind of a lot. And you know, most of the time that I spent walking around looking at things, taking pictures like a tourist, looking like a tourist with the camera in my hand. Um, I will say this. I'm going to tell you what I did, and I'm going to also say that I don't recommend it. I know it was dangerous. You don't have to tell me it was dangerous. I know it was. And you should not do this if you're by yourself. But primarily, as I was walking around, which I mainly stuck to like one area of or like the main strip of like downtown is where I wasn't off the beaten path. So like, you know, maybe it wasn't that dangerous, but still, maybe don't do this. It's really nice. It was really nice just listening to music, walking around, and taking pictures. Now, should I have completely blocked out one of my senses in a semi unfamiliar place? Probably not. But it certainly added to the vibe. And if you're wondering what I was listening to, it was Eviscerate by Idola. I've been listening to that album nonstop. I mean, if I go to Spotify right now, which I gotta stop calling it Spotify, it's not even what it's called anymore, Stats.fm. If I go to Stats.fm right now, I can tell you how many times I've been listening to that album. Oh my god. So, well, okay, this isn't just that album, but let me see. For whatever reason, I don't know why this is, but I think there might be two instances of the album Eviscerate on Spotify, which is why I have it two different times with two different numbers. But I'm looking at the past 6 months on stats.fm, and my top album, number one, is Eviscerate, with 725 streams, and also number five is, I guess, the second instance of Eviscerate with 196 streams. So you do the math. That's almost 200, plus pretty much almost close to 1,000 times I've listened to this dang album. It's definitely up there for my album. Actually, I think I can safely say, I don't know who else is putting out music this year, but I think I can safely say that for 2024, Eviscerate is my album of the year. I'm putting it out there now. We are only just now halfway. We're not even really, because I mean, June just started, but we're pretty much halfway through the year, and I think I can safely say Eviscerate Album of the Year. And honestly, now that I think about it, I don't know, because I don't know. I kind of want to buy the vinyl, because there are vinyls. I think I want to buy it and I want to put it in the coveted, the spot that's been left open for another vinyl. I think I'm going to put it there. I don't know yet. I haven't made my decision. Anything could happen this year. Another album could unseat it. It's not likely, but it could happen. Also, Mend, the part two to this part two finale, this 2-part finale for all of Idola is supposed to come out later this year. So who knows? Mend could, like, unseat it, but for now, I'm saying it's Eviscerate. Anyways, back to the trip, which I mean, I was basically over talking about the trip anyways, but what I ended up doing in New Orleans was walking around, listening to music, and taking pictures, and occasionally doing some writing. And I finished an article, so it's like, it's kind of fine. Um, and also, I went to some great restaurants, some great restaurantes. Let me see. I will mention one because I think this one, I am going back to New Orleans in November, and I think I'm going to take the train, not November, October. I think I'm going to take the train then. I haven't bought my ticket yet, but I really would like to. Like, I really do want to. I'm trying to find the screenshot of it because I sent it to my mom because I wanted to eat there. Except it's not in my photos. What about my pictures? Where is it? It's not in there either. Screenshots? I should hope so. Is this it? That's not it. Where on earth? Why can't I find this? Genuinely. Like, what? Surely. Oh, here it is. I just completely overlooked it. Because I'm a silly Billy. But it's called Dian Jin. It's a kind of a dim sum restaurant. That's what it's called on Google anyways. And for whatever reason, they were cash only that day. But it's on Decatur Street. It's kind of farther north on Decatur Street. And I would really like to go there again when I visit there again. It was pretty good. They have like a pork bao, and I got that. It's pretty good. They also had, gosh, what's it called? I think it was called Xinjiang bao, whereas it was smaller, and it was in the more, steamed, of course, but it's not bread like a normal bao, but it's like a, kind of like gyoza, whatever that wrapper is, kind of like a gyoza wrapper, and it has like the soup on the inside, and you have to eat it a really specific way. I want to try that next time. And also, it wasn't expensive, like, at all to eat there. And also, because, I don't really drink, but I do, if I'm out somewhere and about somewhere. So I was like, okay, I'm in New Orleans. I'm not by myself. I should point that out. I don't drink when I'm by myself, but I'm with people. I'm gonna partake in the libations. So I literally just forgot the name of the restaurant, Dianjin. They have this plum wine that they serve, which is like really sweet and honestly really good. Hardly tasted like alcohol. So if you're there, if you're going to New Orleans, if you're in New Orleans, and you want some mostly authentic Chinese food, it's a pretty good place to go. But I'm not gonna lie, I think the food in New Orleans might have been a little too rich for me because both nights that I was there, I got the tummy troubles. So I don't know what that was all about. I think I don't know. You would think it wouldn't be all that different, but I don't know. I guess the food might have been a little bit too rich because yes, it did give me the tummy troubles, but it was still delicious, and I'm still looking forward to going back and getting food. However, didn't have any beignets. That wasn't, I mean, I don't know. I don't think I've ever had a beignet before, but that wasn't really at the top of my culinary priorities. I didn't really want one, to be honest, but, having been to New Orleans as many times as I have and not had a beignet, I guess I should get one the next time that I'm down there, whatever. I did want to go to Cafe du Monde, however, it was kind of a prolonged walk from my hotel, and the first time that I went down there, I went with my dad, and of course he's been down there a million times because he's from Mobile, but he, stressed me like, oh, we gotta go to Cafe Du Monde. And the time that we went, we had to wake up mad early because it opens, I want to say at like 7 something. So we ended up getting up at like 6:30 and walking from our hotel to Cafe Du Monde, which still, even then, that was like a prolonged distance. And I liked the coffee. I didn't like it that much. I'm not gonna lie. Like I have, it's not the Cafe Du Monde kind because they don't sell it in Walmart anymore for whatever dumb reason. Um, but I do like the coffee and chicory blend. I think it's a lot milder and smoother than like. Well, okay. To be fair, what I was drinking before this coffee and chicory blend, I can't remember what it's called. I can't tell. I think it's called French Market or something like that. It comes in the red can. I was drinking Cafe Bustelo before that, the one in the yellow can, and I think that's technically espresso. So, of course, it's going to be a little bit milder and smoother than that, but I like the coffee, but I don't know if I want to wake up at 6 o'clock. Because listen, I'm an adult. I'm not a kid anymore. There's no reason for me to. Well, okay, that's not true. I still wake up at 6 o'clock to go to work, but I'm not waking up at 6 o'clock and then out the door at like 7 or something like that. Because, I mean, if you think about it, kids have to wake up so early to go to school. And aside from, some jobs, maybe night shift type jobs, realistically, you're not going to be up that early in the morning trying to get out the door if you're an adult, unless you have kids. So it's like unrealistic expectation, honestly. Like, I'm not waking up that early. I'm not hitting the road at like 7 something in the morning. You know? That's crazy. Because, like, by the time I leave to go to work, kids are already in like their first period or their first block or whatever. Like they've been at school, they've had breakfast at school, they're out of homeroom, they're in their first period, their first block. Maybe they're like halfway through, they're about to get to second period, you know? They're about to rush to their lockers to switch out their books because they have 3 minutes to walk from one side of the school to another side of the school, which that was my lived experience in school. Um, School really is a lot of pressure. I don't want to get too off topic because I do have a lot to talk about today. Um, well, not a lot. There's literally 3 topics, and I'm done with one of them, but both of them are kind of long. All 3 of them are pretty long. But still, I think it's pretty crazy how much pressure school puts on you. And I don't know if it's just because I lucked out, but I've not had as much pressure and expectations on me as an adult now than I have when I was a kid in school. Like, that's kind of crazy, you know? Like, school is hypothetically, allegedly, supposed to prepare you for the real world, but my real world experience has been several orders of magnitude more chill than my school experience. And I don't have time to unpack that, so we're just gonna move on to my next topic of conversation. I had to take a sip break there. So, as per usual, I am going to, quite a few gigs and whatnot around here, and I'm trying to see which ones that I actually went to in between. I'm looking through my calendar to see which ones I want to talk about. Oh my goodness. Okay. So first gig I want to talk about. I don't know why I forgot about this one. I know I didn't talk about it in my last episode. I'm pretty sure I didn't anyways, but there is a band from New Orleans called Blue who has been hyped up to me by literally everyone that I talked to about it. Like, Blue was like apparently some people's like punk awakening, and so obviously I had to see them. And I don't know if it's been overhyped to me or what, but I thought they were fine, but not like revolutionary or life changing, which, ooh, I don't know how that sounds, but I enjoyed them. Let me say that. I enjoyed them, but I think because people had hyped them up so much, I don't know, maybe my expectations were set far too high for Blue, but I did enjoy them. I want to say that. I did enjoy them. And of course, my I don't want to say my good sis, but I'm gonna say it anyways. My good sis, Hammer and the Tools, um, a collective noun, Hammer and the Tools. I saw them perform in that show as well. I really like Hammer and the Tools. I talked about seeing them for the first time on this pod. Also, I like how I just picked that up, swirled it around, and put it back down. Whatever. I talked about seeing them for the first time on the pod, which I believe that was like their second show ever. And I think then I said they're a little rough around the edges, but I like their energy. And I will say, they're no longer that rough around the edges, but they still got the energy. So I like Hammer and the Tools a lot. Um, in fact, they've put out, I don't know if this is an album or an EP. I feel like we play fast and loose with the terms EP and album. I don't really know what to call it. There is a body of work from Hammer and the Tools that they just put out. It's only on Bandcamp for now. I don't know if they plan on putting it on streaming services or not, but it's called Hamma, Hamma. And I'm looking over here because I have the tape. I don't have any of my trinkets that I've recently acquired because today I put up a shelf, my tape shelf. I finally have it up. And also, the idea that I had a couple episodes ago to use my cork pads to put up my stickers and pins, I've also put that up. So they're like, I don't have them with me, but I put those up and I really like how they turned out. They look really nice and I like them a lot. Moving on. What was I saying? Oh, they put out a body of work. I don't know if it's an album or an EP. It's a collection of songs that you can listen to, and it's on Bandcamp. It's called Hamma by Hammer and the Tools. And I really like the band, you know? It's very fast, it's very loud, it's very aggressive, but like, I like that, you know? I like that. So, yeah, Hammer and the Tools, check them out if you can. If you're in Jackson, if you're in the area, see them perform. I actually don't know if they have any upcoming performances. I don't think they do, because they had 3 all around the same time. So they had the D Sablu show, they had the Censor Ghost show, and they also had West Fest, which I will also talk about. But and that was all within like 2 weeks. So I don't know when they're gonna be performing next. To be completely honest, let me see. Oh, they'll be performing next later this month, June 28th. So if you are around during that time, see them, check them out, say hello to them. They're really nice people. They won't, spit on you. I don't know why that was the first thing that came to mind, but they won't do any of the bad things. They'll say hello because they're nice. Anyways, that was a really fun show. Again, so it was held at the, oh my gosh, why am I blanking? End of All Music. There's a record store here in Jackson, and sometimes they do have shows like actually inside the record store, but usually they have them outside. I think they call it the atrium. It's not an atrium because an atrium is an indoor structure with like a huge window in the ceiling. This is a patio. This is outdoors. This is out of doors, okay? And so it's hot. It's getting hot. It's getting hotter. You're gonna hear me complain about the heat a lot this summer, so just like mentally prepare yourself for me complaining about the heat all the time, but it's hot, okay? Until I move somewhere with cold or a nice temperate climate, I'm gonna complain about the heat. And it's hot. It was hot that day. So, just the outdoor shows, they're going to be hot. And that's so unfortunate for me, mostly. Some people like the heat. I don't know why. I don't know how. I don't know where these people came from. But some people like it. I'm not one of those people. I'm not the one who likes it. So, the other people, they'll be enjoying the heat so much. I won't. Moving on. That was that show. Let me tell you everyone who's on the bill so I don't forget anyone. So it was D Sablu from New Orleans, Hammer and the Tools from Jackson, Frankie Friday, who is the singer vocalist for Crypt Eater, has a side project called Frankie Friday. How could I forget? I was about to move on from this one. Because I'm a person who doesn't swear, I can't say the name of this band, but I follow a few different DIY accounts in the region. And so I follow the Birmingham DIY account for Birmingham, Alabama, not for the UK, because that's not in the region. And I saw that they would be having this band from Tijuana, Mexico called Hong Kong FU. And what was really funny about the tour poster is that it was the Hong Kong F's the South East tour, except for Mississippi. That's what it was called. And I was like, oh man, like why? What? It's like that 50 Cent meme. Like, why is it F me for? You know, like why not us? You know, so I believe it was probably Riggs of Good Gigs. Apparently, it just worked out in a way that one of their tour dates ended up falling through, and so they had time to come to Jackson, and they came to Jackson. Oh my God, I don't think they're still on tour, but if, and I mean, I don't even know when they would come back through because they're from friggin' Mexico, but if you have the ability to see Hong Kong FU, you got to do it. First of all, the aesthetic is pretty impeccable. I will say that. They have like a visual, if that makes sense. I don't know if it does. But also at the same time, the music is just great. It's more of like I guess you would call it power violence. Where it's just, fast, loud, and angry. The kinds of things that I like, So I haven't even checked if they have music streaming anywhere. They probably do on Bandcamp or something like that, but I'm gonna look on the Spotify's. Hong Kong. Oop, I spelled that wrong. Kong. Oh, here it is. Oh my God, that's not even. Here we go. Is that it? Yes, they are on Spotify and they have 28,000 monthly listeners. Okay, they're actually. Oh my God, they have a song. Oh wow. Okay. Okay. So you listening right here might actually know who Hong Kong FU are, because I didn't think they would be that, I don't know, popular, I guess? They have 28,000 monthly listeners, and their songs have hundreds of thousands of listens. So they're actually, I mean, hey, maybe the people know. Maybe I just don't know, but I know now. And honestly, I need to stream. Oh my God. Ugh, I need to stream. Okay. I'm gonna make a note to do that a little bit later. But yeah, check them out if you can. I'm honestly mad at myself that I didn't buy any merch, but I was kind of trying to save my money in the lead up to my New Orleans trip, which is interesting because I didn't even really end up buying anything while I was in New Orleans aside from food. So maybe I could have spent my money a little bit more. I don't know. I'm mad I didn't buy any merch, but they might have a merch store and I might be able to rectify my mistake. Or you can rectify my mistake on my behalf and buy merch. Not to give to me, just to have it for yourself, by the way. I'm not asking for you to buy me merch. I'm asking you to buy merch for yourself to make up for me not buying merch, even though I probably will eventually. So I hope they come back through the United States. I like them a lot. And when I was in New Orleans, I don't know what venue I passed by, but I saw a poster for, their show that was there. Because I think after they went to, or maybe before, I don't know, at some point, either before or after the show that I saw them at, they were in New Orleans. And so the poster was still up I can't even remember what the venue was. So yeah, I do know that there is one like big, I guess kind of punk metal hardcore venue in New Orleans called Siberia. And one of these days I do want to go see what they got going on down there. However, for the most part, the times that I go for New Orleans, the times that I go to New Orleans, it's for, more mainstream shows, which really even aren't that mainstream to begin with. But also I'm praying that the House of Blues gets their ear fixed soon. I feel like they should have, since I've seen them last, which that was like 2 weeks ago. If it's been 2 weeks and they haven't gotten their ear fixed, I don't know what's going on. Y'all need to figure that out, because, yeah. Anywho, after that, Um, let's see. Where have I been after that? So, because of my trip to New Orleans, I had to miss Couch Fest, unfortunately. But again, I had planned that trip before I had even started Jackson Underground, which I mean, aside from that, I still would have wanted to go to Couch Fest, but I feel like if I did go, I would try to turn it into something for the blog, but I ended up having a trip. And also a lot of bands that I like were playing, like Death Rose was there. So it's like, oh man, I missed it. And also it's like a legit, music fest. And art. They had art as well. So it's like, oh man, I kind of hate that I missed it. Because I did really want to go last year, but by the time I learned about it last year, it had already happened. So, that's unfortunate. Um, After that was Contusion featuring Crypt Eater, Kicking, and You're the Vulture. So I there are a lot of people hyped about this Contusion show because I think Contusion is like a super group between a lot of other, I think, more well-known punk bands. I'm not I am these days, but I don't have like that, I don't know, what do you call it? Not perspective, not lived experience. I don't know why I don't want to say lived experience, but I don't have the knowledge of like punk bands to like be hyped about it. But apparently, the members of Contusion are also members in like some pretty prominent punk bands, and they're really good. I like them a lot. Of course, Crypt Eater, my uncles, like I'm always gonna show up for them. Like I love seeing Crypt Eater, like especially now because I've been listening to their album basically nonstop. Not as much as Eviscerate, but also it hasn't been out for as long as Eviscerate, so I have a little bit of leeway there. Now I actually know the lyrics to the song, so I can sing along, so that's fun. I love that. Just waiting for them to make a couple more bangers that I can eventually learn the lyrics to. I will be there, I will be seated, and I will be streaming whenever Crypt Eater puts out any new music, which, I mean, they literally just put something out, so it's like, no rush at all. Like, there's literally no hurry. But I was kind of disappointed because I really wanted a tape because I've been collecting tapes. I have one, two, three new ones from the shows that I've been at in the past like week and a half, but not a Crypt Eater tape, which I could easily just buy one from like their Bandcamp and like have it shipped to my house. But I don't know, there's something special about buying it in person that I've just wanted to do more. But I wasn't able to do that at the show, which I'm very sad about that. I want a Weight of Hatred tape, and I'm gonna pay for it. It doesn't have to be given to me. I am willing to pay for it. But I just want the tape. It looks so good up there on my shelf. I have one, two, three, four. I have 5 tapes now. Um, and hopefully I can fill the shelf up and then have to buy another shelf and fill it up too. Anyways, Crypt Eater, of course, always going to show up for Crypt Eater. Kicking, I've seen so many times around here. They always put on a good show. Also, I finally been able to sit down and like listen, like actually listen to Kicking songs, and I like them a lot. I will say that. I like Kicking's music. And now, because I'm not going to lie, going to some of these venues here, it really is a toss up for how the sound quality is going to be. Which, I mean, again, that's not really on the bands, it's kind of on whoever's handling sound at a particular venue. However, sometimes, like, particularly with Measureless Aeons, they have someone in their band that is, like, really anal about how things sound, so, that's gonna be a little bit different, but for the most part, for some of the other bands, because again, I mean, I've mentioned this and acknowledged this before, but it's not going to be super feasible for every band to be on top of their sound design at every venue they're going to be at. So it's like, that just ends up happening. But I feel like every time I see Kicking, like, the vocals always get lost in the instrumentals, which is so unfortunate because I love Bobby's voice. Like, I've been able to listen to their recordings and her voice is just so good. Like, oh my God, like, wow, And I just want them to be able to go to a venue with some good sound design so that everybody else can hear it. But for now, you're going to have to go to their recorded stuff to be able to hear her voice, which is genuinely beautiful, Um, So I saw them and Year of the Vulture. I gotta talk to you about Year of the Vulture. I gotta talk to you about Year of the Vulture. I gotta talk to you about Year of the Vulture. I got something to tell you about Year of the Vulture. I love Year of the Vulture. Oh my god. The previous time that they're gonna play, actually they've been on tour for like a while. But I think this show was like their last semi-local one because they're from Hattiesburg, which also, let me say this. I don't know if I'm saying Hattiesburg wrong, because the few people that I've talked to who's from Hattiesburg, they don't say Hattiesburg. They say Hattiesburg. There's a subtle difference. I say Hattiesburg. They say Hattiesburg. So I don't know if I'm saying it wrong. People from Hattiesburg or Hattiesburg, chime in. Call in. We're standing by. How do you say Hattiesburg? I really need to know. Anyways, they're from Hattiesburg. And this was going to be like their last semi-local gig for a while, but the last time that they were here in Jackson was the day that I went out of town to see the Amity Affliction, and honestly I really wanted to see them because there are a couple other bands on the bill that I was kind of looking forward to, and also this other band called MS Paint that a lot of other people were hyping up, so I was like, oh, I gotta see what the hype is about. And I was like, oh man, I'm gonna be out of town because I'm seeing the Amity Affliction, which is glad that I saw the Amity Affliction when I did, because now Aaron's out. So, now I got the correct lineup, and the rest of the tour will not have that. But I don't even know if I'm gonna talk about that, to be completely honest. There's not really a whole lot to talk about. Aaron, I think his last name is Stringer. He is bassist, question mark, but he does the cleans for the Amity Affliction. Basically, it's conflicting because there's what he said and then what they say. But they removed him from the tour to, I guess, for him to get a handle on his addiction, which is unfortunate. But I am glad that I got to see them with the unbroken lineup, because if I didn't, it probably wouldn't have been as special. So yeah, that's just that. But what was I saying? I was talking about the Year of the Vulture. Oh, the last time they were here was when I was at that show. So I didn't get to see them that time, but I got to see them this time, and I'm glad I got to see them this time. So, Year of the Vulture, they're a two-piece, but not just a two-piece, which every time I say X-piece, like, a three-piece or a two-piece, of course I think about, I don't know, because you only ever hear that in reference to bands or, like, chicken for some reason. I don't know why, but they're not any two-piece. If I had to compare them to a combo meal, they are a two-piece dark with a honey butter biscuit and fries, and everything is fresh out the oil. Fresh oil, not old oil, and it's delicious and nourishing and comforting. That's the kind of two-piece that they are, which is funny considering the kind of music that they make. I would think the vast majority of people will not describe that as comforting. I do. Other people wouldn't, though. So, but they're a kind of, I don't know, let me just go to their Bandcamp, because they'll describe themselves better than I can describe them. And also, I figured out a way to describe bands better than I have been, because I am not good at describing bands, but if I take a band's music and I think about them in the context of a movie, and I just describe the kind of movie that they would be in, I think that would make more sense than me struggling to describe a genre. So I'm going to get to that in a little bit, but Year of the Vulture band, let's see, they're from Hattiesburg, a two-piece dark with a honey butter biscuit and fries, all fresh. Is there a genre? So they're kind of doom metal, kind of sludge metal. Let's see. And what's interesting as well is, like I said, it's a two-piece. So one guy, I can say his name. What's his name? Nate. Nate is on the drums, but he also does vocals. And then there's Alfred, who's on the bass and does vocals. And you're like, bass? That's a bass. Where's the guitar? Well, what I had found out from another person who was there that I was seeing them with is that they have a bass that is routed into a bass amp and also simultaneously routed into a guitar amp. So, with, I guess, whatever their pedal setup is, they can switch, I guess, go up and down octaves, because I mean that's really what you'd be doing. Go up an octave and be a guitar, and then go down an octave and be a bass, and that is so dope. Oh my gosh! But also, just the vocal style of Alfred, who is the, I would say, primary vocalist. I genuinely can't explain that one, because I was trying to think of what to compare them to, because it is like familiar to me, but I also can't put my finger on it, like what exactly it is. I genuinely just don't know. But listen to their music. They don't have a lot of stuff out. But they have one, which I guess is the first thing that they put out, but that's all instrumental. They have a live album, You're the Vulture live at the Freetown Boom Boom Room, which funny. Um, let's see, the Boom Boom Room in Lafayette, Louisiana, recorded in 2018. So they've been around for a bit. That's even though it is a live recording, it's pretty good. And then Weaker Than, which came out October 2018. Again, also pretty good. Aside from that, I haven't really been able to find anything else. They're not on Spotify. They're only on Bandcamp, which again, fine. It's just I unfortunately don't use Bandcamp, so oopsie doodles. But I like him a lot. I like the vocal style. I like, the kind of, I don't know. It does really feel doomy, kind of like the more doom metal kind of stylings. And okay, so I'm not gonna struggle. I'm just gonna think of what kind of movie they're gonna be in. So if I had to describe the kind of film that You're the Vulture would be in, I would say it's kind of like I don't know, something about anarchy. Something about protesting. But like that also doesn't work. Dang. Okay. I'm just gonna have to be bad at describing music. You're just gonna have to go and listen to it. You're just gonna have to go stream. You're just gonna have to go find it for yourself. You know? That's all I can tell you. I'm just genuinely so bad at describing music. Like, it's a special skill that I have. Thankfully, they have music for you to stream. You're the Vulture on Bandcamp. Look them up because I truly cannot describe how they are. I felt like that was gonna work a little bit better than it did, but it didn't. So, oopsie. You have no choice but to stream, unless you're just gonna be in the dark for the rest of your life. Sorry, but stream them and find out. So that was that gig. Who Nelly? After that on Friday was Censor Ghost. Okay, so while I was thinking up that strategy, I do have an answer for Censor Ghost. I can tell you what kind of movie they would be in. The kind of movie that they would be in would be a Wes Anderson movie, but not like, not, it's more of a normal Wes Anderson movie, so not taking place in any kind of fantastical location. Something set in like the suburbs. Something set in the suburbs with like there's a dad and he has two sons and they're just trying to make it in this world, but it's a Wes Anderson film. That's the kind of music that Censor Ghost makes. And if you stream, hopefully you will see what I'm talking about, but that's the vibe that I got from their music. Not exactly something that I would seek out musically, but I did find it enjoyable. And honestly, if I were making a zany Wes Anderson type film about a single dad with two sons in suburbia just trying to make it in this world, I would use Censor Ghost music in my soundtrack. So there you have it. The one thing that I am getting out of expanding my musical horizons is that when I do become a filmmaker and it is time for me to build the soundtrack, I have a lot more references to pull from. So thank you, Censor Ghost. Thank you for that one. I can't guarantee that I'll become a filmmaker. Hopefully. Maybe. One day. That's the plan. But if ever I do make a zany, probably not Wes Anderson style, because I'm trying to put my own spin on it, but something zany about a single dad with two sons in suburbia trying to make it in this world, I might use Censor Ghost music. So, hopefully your fees aren't too high. And of course, you have Hammer and the Tools again. And then the Guiding Light, which I can truly only describe as like a dad rock band because, yeah, that was three fathers making music and having fun together. And I was talking to my mom about it because I was talking to one of the guys who's in it, the drummer. He works at the Department of Archives and History here in Jackson, which is like one of the, I don't know, I'm not gonna lie, working at the Department of Archives and History, that's very not an ordinary job, but it feels ordinary. Because I thought he was just there, just hanging out, which would have been fine. But then, it's time for the Guiding Light to come on. Yeah, I forgot their name for a hot second. It was time for the Guiding Light to come on, and I see him get behind the drum kit, and I was like, he's in the band. Oh, cool. So it's like, yeah. I feel like, and hear me out, this may or may not be true. Maybe if you were a kid of a dad like this, maybe your lived experience is different. But I feel like if more Gen X and boomer dads can just like start a band with their friends, they might be a little bit more chill. They might chill out a little bit. I don't know. It's just a hypothesis of mine. If you have a Gen X or boomer dad who you think needs to chill out, would they benefit from being in a band with their friends? They probably would benefit from having friends. I mean, most people benefit from having friends, and hobbies. Friends and hobbies other than like golf or fishing or cutting the grass. That's not really a hobby. What is it what's a stereotypical boomer dad hobby other than like golf and fishing? Which are two things that my dad does. Baseball, watching baseball, not playing it. Maybe playing softball. I feel like even still, if you had a Gen X or boomer dad who played softball, you'd probably be a little bit more chill. That's all I'm saying. I feel like there are many Gen X and boomer fathers out there who really could chill out just a little bit. And I feel like the way for them to do that is to make a band with their friends and just like goof around and have a silly goose time. It keeps you young. And I can only hope that when I am, Gen X boomer dad age, that I'm having a silly goose time and having fun with my friends. That's all I can hope for in this life. That's all I can hope for in this life. Doesn't have to be in a band, but those fathers are certainly living the dream, Yeah. That's all I have to say about that. Pretty good music, again, not something that I would seek out to listen to, but if I had to put it in a movie, I would say it would be in a rom-com about divorcees, and perhaps they see this band. Okay, so it's a first date between the two divorcees, right? They're in a will they won't they for a while, but finally they get together and they have their first date at the local dive bar, and the Guiding Light type band, not necessarily them, maybe them, I don't know, could be, they're playing, and during the climactic crescendo of the song, the two divorcees kiss and their relationship is sealed in that, yeah, I think I described it pretty well in that time. But yeah, so that was that show. And then there was something called Westfest that was this Saturday, which was literally yesterday. It was a collection of bands that got together to do a benefit show because a member of the community had very sadly passed away, left behind a wife and a very young daughter, whose birthday I believe is literally today, if I heard it right. And so yeah, I thought it would be like more sad than it was, considering, this is a show to benefit the family of a guy who passed away. But it was honestly a fun time. Everyone was having fun. I didn't know Wes personally. I'm not even sure if I ever saw him around, but you do what you can, and what you can do is, go to a show, throw the family a few dollars, and, obviously it's not going to bring their husband and dad back, but as I have learned recently, dying is expensive. Like, obviously it's not expensive to you as the dead person because you're dead and you don't have to worry about anything ever again anymore. But to the people you leave behind, it is monetarily intense especially depending on the way that you die, which I don't know how Wes passed away, but um, so what I ended up finding out the next day, which literally today, again, my days are getting mixed up. We ended up raising $1,000 for Wes's family, and again, every little bit helps. So that was pretty nice, and I got to saw. Oh God, my brain is breaking down. I got to see a bunch of bands that I like, and it benefited a family that needed it. So that I am happy about. So yeah, it was a nice show. I will tell you the bands on the lineup. It was Holy Vision, who I've seen once before, Hammer and the Tools, which literally my third time seeing them in like a week and a half. I've been seeing them a lot recently. Um, Cannon, who I've seen, I believe, once before, and oh my goodness, I'm gonna forget his name, which is so unfortunate, but it takes me a while to remember names, so I'm just gonna blame it on that, blame it on my brain. It's not on purpose. But the guitarist for Headcanon, whose name I unfortunately forgot, the first time that I saw them, he had actually spotted me first. He like waved at me as I was walking up the little platform thingy at Hal and Mouse to get into the room. And, he introduced himself to me. He was like, "Hey, you're Jackson Underground, aren't you?" I was like, "Yeah, I am." And by the way, I still am so surprised and shocked when people recognize me, which I don't know why I am. I do post pictures and videos of myself on my story, so it's like it's not you're gonna recognize me. Like it's not a mystery who runs the account. It never really was a mystery who ran the account, to be completely honest, but you know, it still is kind of a shock when people like come to me and they're like, and I don't know how many times, I feel like I say this literally every episode because it happens like at least once at practically every show that I go to. Someone will come up to me and like be like, "Hey, you're Jackson Underground, right? Like I love your stuff." And I'm always like, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much. This is so crazy." Like yada yada yada, like thank you for reading, thank you for supporting, that kind of thing. But the first time that I saw them, the guitarist for Headcanon came up to me, introduced himself to me, said how much he liked my work, and that was really nice. I like the band. They have some recordings on Spotify. They probably have more on Bandcamp. And you should definitely stream. You should stream them. You should do it. And then as well, I don't know if it was the last show or the last band on the bill, because there is another one on there called Bad Anxiety. I don't know. I didn't end up seeing them because I'm not gonna lie, yesterday I was kind of tired, so I ended up dipping a little bit early. But I think as they were taking their merch out of the Interval Music, because again I can't remember if it was the end of the show or not, but I was on my way out. But anyways, towards the end of the night, the guitarist comes up to me and hands me like 2 stickers, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, these are for me?" And he's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Ah, that's nice." You know, it's just being recognized in this way, and being kind of appreciated in this way is, again, it's still very new to me, but I am always grateful for the people who come up to me and tell me, not only just recognize me, but just tell me how much they enjoy my work. Because, I mean, if you think about it, being a writer is something I've always wanted to do. Like, this is nothing new, right? But now I am actually starting to be recognized for my written works. Like, people are reading what I'm writing. And I mean, people have read what I've written before, like, in my endeavors being a fan fiction writer or being a Wattpad writer or being a tapas, I think that's what it's called now, writer. Like, people have been reading my stuff online for about as long as I've been posting my writings online. But now to have people like actually recognize me and come up to me and tell me in person how much they like it, that definitely hits so much different than, just like a comment online. So to all those people who have recognized me in person and told me how much they enjoy my work, like, thank you a million times, because like it's just the greatest feeling, and like I tell pretty much everybody, I do this because I love it. I do this because I love it so much, and as long as I am loving it, I will continue to do it. So that's a little spiel that definitely went way off topic, but that was the last show that I went to. So yeah, that's that. I've been an hour and a half and I'm not even at my last topic. And it's probably going to go on for a little long too. So this is definitely going to be probably the longest episode of the pod that I've done thus far. I've debated, and I put this at the end for a reason. I've debated whether or not I wanted to talk about what I'm sort of kind of about to talk about for a little bit since it happened, because I'm not going to lie. It was kind of wild and wacky when it happened, but the more time that has passed and more than I think about it, it was simultaneously exceptionally goofy. I'll say it was real goofy. I'm not gonna lie. It was mad goofy. Anyway, there was. I'm gonna keep it as vague as possible because, again, this, first of all, wasn't something that happened to me. So it's like I am truly a third party in this conversation, but I thought I would, kind of use my platform a little bit to talk about it, but not talk about the situation directly, but talk about something else, which I'm going to get to. But there's something that happened after the gig on Wednesday, after the contusion gig, which if you know, if you don't, you're not gonna, because I have decided that people have been DMing me. Well, okay, since that day, there's only been like one person DMing me asking me what happened. And I decided this isn't really my place to be talking about in the first place. Again, I'm not involved, so I'm staying out of it. I never really should have been in it in the first place. I don't think I put myself in it, but again, I'm divorcing myself from the situation. But the whole, I think, crux, oh god, that was a crazy voice crack. Whoa. The whole crux of the issue, I think, and, each party can probably tell me that this wasn't the case. I have heard from each party roughly what happened. Well, actually, I've only really heard from one. No, that's not. Okay, I have heard from both parties roughly what happened. Are there being gaps left out on both sides? Probably. Are both sides equally in the wrong? I don't know. It's not really for me to decide, to be completely honest with you, but what was I saying? The crux of the issue, I think, to me, it seems, and again, each party might have a differing opinion on this, but the crux of the issue, to me, it seems, is the amount of money that local bands get paid for the gigs that they do here in Jackson. So, I've written about this in my article about Good Gigs Jackson, but of course, there has been music going on here for, as long as Jackson's been around. But if we want to talk about specifically the punk, hardcore, metal, heavier music scene, it was something that existed in the 2000s, and then it kind of splintered and died off a little bit, but it's had a recent resurgence in the last, I would say, year and a half, maybe something like that. And so, because of that, there are not a lot of people who book shows here in Jackson. So it really is down to a handful of people that you go to if you have a band and you want to play a show here in Jackson, which for the most part, in my opinion, I don't think it's being gatekept, at all. To be completely honest with you, I don't think it's being gatekept. I don't get that impression. Other people can disagree with me because, again, I am just a person who shows up to these things. I'm not a band. I'm not a musician. I don't perform places. So that experience is probably it's definitely different. I already know it's different, but something that I've kind of, it's kind of a refrain from, again, Gen X and boomer parents is that if you're gonna do something in the arts, you're probably not gonna make a lot of money. Which, as someone who is in the arts, if I was, and I mean, this is told to me by my freaking film professor, so this isn't a new concept by any means, but if you are doing something in the arts, and if you are truly, going for it, chances are you're not going to be making money. The vast majority of filmmakers out there, the vast majority of writers out there, the vast majority of musicians out there, this is not their full-time job. And as a result of that, they are likely not making the majority of their money off of this. They are not using this to survive. And as a result of that, a lot of creatives A lot of artists, they do have to have day jobs to supplement their art. And that's life. It really truly is just life. Because as it was explained to me by my film professor when I was in college, you have two routes that you can take basically. You can go towards the filmmaker life, right? If you want to be a director, you can do that and you can live at home and you can essentially not really make a lot of money, maybe work part-time just to fund, just to have enough money to have a budget for your low budget projects. You can do that and maybe you can even be happy doing that, but you won't really get an income doing that. Or you can go the corporate route. You can work in marketing, you can work in advertising, you can work making commercials. You can use your film skills in a way that will give you a full-time job with full-time wages that will allow you to pay rent, which is essentially what I've done, which there's nothing inherently wrong with that. I want to make that very clear. There's nothing wrong with having a day job as a creative. In fact, I would encourage you as a creative to have a day job because it is, unfortunately, a trade-off that you will have to make. Because if you have a day job, if you work full-time, especially as a creative, why is my battery dying? God, as I was saying, if you are a creative and you work full-time, it is a trade-off because, while you will have money to survive and potentially even money to pursue your creative pursuits, you're not going to have a lot of time to actually do those creative pursuits, which is, something that you kind of have to reckon with as a creative. Like, if you're okay with that, great, that's wonderful. But if you're not okay with that, then of course the other option is, working part-time for scraps and kind of, roughing it, essentially. And me personally, I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't okay with that because when I was in school for creative writing, I saw that what was likely going to happen for me as a writer, first of all, I already knew that, which is crazy to say, but I already knew I did not have the patience to be a novelist. Like, I just didn't have the patience for it. I'm not gonna lie, I went into college with not a lot of plans. Thankfully, it ended up working out, but I will say that is rare that it worked out. I would say if you go into college with not a great plan and it doesn't work out, that's probably the normal outcome. I don't know, but that was something that was explained to me by my film professor. Those were your two options. And so I chose the option of not roughing it because realistically, well, first of all, I did not want to live with my parents because living with my parents meant living in Selma, Alabama, which there would be no opportunities for me there anyway. So it's like, even if I did live with my parents and try to make the filmmaker life work, I don't even have the access, I don't have the proximity to the other filmmakers. So it's like, what would be the point of that? So I sort of made a 5-year plan for myself that would put me in option 2, where I would be working full time, probably doing something I'm not super passionate about, but that would give me proximity to filmmakers. That ended up happening. I didn't move to Atlanta. I'm here in Jackson. There are filmmakers here, but I will say the community of filmmakers here is very cloistered. They're very tight knit. I wouldn't say they are willing to have outsiders, but I don't know. Based on the one Facebook group that I'm part of, which I'm not active in, and I haven't even checked it in several months, but I don't know. They all seem very jaded, and jadedness is not something that I need in my creative pursuits. So I don't know if I want to, I'm gonna move on. Basically, as I was saying, I've heard the arguments from both sides. People in the particular local band that was playing that night, I'm not going to name them, in that particular, well, no, I'm not going to name them, which, again, it's, if you know, and if you don't, I'm not going to tell you, because it's not my story to tell, but the people in that band thought that they weren't being compensated enough. And I could get into the payment splits for, you know, the band that I had seen. And it's like, I mean, it's not really, that's not really the crux of what I'm talking about right now. But this whole situation got me to thinking. It's like, you know, there's a question of, okay, maybe this one particular person in the band, or I don't really know how, to be completely honest, I don't really know how the rest of the band feels about this. I've only been contacted by two of the members, and they sort of shared the same sentiment. One of them was more intense about it than the other one, but, and not intense in a bad way. I'd say intense, more feeling strongly about it because they were actually at the center of what happened. We'll say that much. Um, so, like, I don't know. But it got me to thinking, like, okay, I am not in the touring musician life. I am not in the option one of, like, roughing it. I put myself in option two because I like having a normal income. I like being able to pay my rent. I like not having to work odd jobs. Is that privilege of me? Maybe. It's a great privilege that I have. And honestly, to be completely honest, I lucked out because there are probably a lot of film students, former film students throughout this country who have graduated with their film degree and they haven't touched a camera in years. And I get to work with them practically every day. I mean, I don't do shoots every day. I'm mostly editing like 90% of the time. But still, the fact that I can even say that is probably rare for a lot of former film students. So, like, I understand how, I guess, kind of lucky I am in that regard, especially considering the fact that I live in Mississippi. And again, there's not that many filmmaking opportunities here. They're here. There's not a lot of them. So, like, I get how lucky I am, and I get how my perspective might be skewed because I have a regular 40-hour-a-week job. I'm able to pay my rent and my bills. I'm able to have fun money to be able to go to all of these shows, and travel all these places, which I'm not really traveling all these places, but be able to travel at all, So I get that I'm lucky in that regard, and I get that I probably don't have the perspective of the person who is upset about the band's pay. But also at the same time, I know that if you put yourself in option one, you're not going to be making money. And that option one goes for practically any creative pursuit, music included, right? So if you are a musician here in Jackson playing small gigs to 30 people or less, you're not going to be making bank. I don't know if that's the expectation. I don't know if that's the expectation that this person has. But at the same time, to me, it also kind of seems that is the expectation that they have. And, the person explained it to me. They DM'd me that day about the situation, gave me their perspective, and I read it. And I was like, okay, I understand this. Thank you for telling me this. But at the same time, it's like, what do you expect? And I don't want to be like, well, what do you expect? Because it sounds like, that's your fault. And, is it really? But also at the same time, I can't help but think, what do you expect? So that was kind of on my mind for a while. But then at Westfest yesterday, Zach of, I was about to say Burning Windsor. Goodness gracious. There is a person named Zach in Burning Windsor, but Zach from Hammer and the Tools gave me this, which is, okay, it's really shiny, so it might be some glare. It's Burning Fight. By the way, if you're only listening to the audio version of the podcast, you're only getting half the story, but I will describe it to you. It is Burning Fight. This is volume 2 of the zine that he makes, which, as he described to me, it's quarterly. So it's a Jackson, Mississippi art zine, and it has pictures, there's poems, there are like art collages, and there are essays in here. And one of the essays that I will flip to now is called Labor Value in DIY. And upon reading this, I was like, So I flipped to the last page, well, of the essay, not of the zine, And I saw the byline. I was like, okay, I see. And so this doesn't have a date on it. I didn't ask when this was published, but I think it was in February. Just based on some of the other details in here. I think this is published in February. So, and as I've spoken to other people throughout the community, apparently this person did have a reputation for speaking about this subject in particular. So, once I read this, it did start to make a lot of sense as far as this person's perspective goes. And it's not super long, so I did want to read it in its entirety. It's called Labor Values in DIY. It's an essay, but it's not, super formally written or anything like that. It's mostly pretty conversational, and again, it's not super long, so I'm going to read it. So to start, to be honest, I don't want to be writing this. I'm exhausted, and I feel like I've had these discussions with people and spoken until I was blue in the face about money. So much to the point that I'm afraid that I've given myself and my band a bad reputation. My intrusive thoughts constantly pestering me with the worry that people think we're greedy, that we aren't punk and we aren't DIY and we don't play unless you pay. What nonsense. On the other hand, though, I've noticed certain people who book shows in town have started to preface questions about booking with statements like, I'm working on being better at paying bands, or I promise we'll have some money for you if the show goes well. And that makes me think that at this point, after the year or so that Jackson has been back, parentheses, some of us never left, but that's for another time. Which, by the way, knowing who I know this is about, that's kind of shady. I'm not gonna lie. It's a little shady. A teeny weeny bit shady. Just a little bit, but we're gonna move on. People leave their hometowns for a variety of reasons. I left mine because I wanted better opportunities. There aren't a whole lot of opportunities for a decent amount of people here in Jackson. It is a larger town than what I grew up in, but I can recognize that it also doesn't offer what a lot of people want in their life. So I'm just going to move on. We're going to move on. I'm going to try to not interject too much, but I just wanted to point that out. Anyway. Some of us never left, but that's for another time. That my band can't be the only one with concerns about local artists not getting paid. This is not my first draft of this idea either. Back in December, which I think December 2023, I put together the most jaded, callous, and scathingly critical, almost 2,000-word essay that I've maybe ever written, specifically about paying bands. Don't worry, though. Hopefully no one will ever see that draft, and hopefully this final version doesn't come across as cruel as that one ended up being. Which, to be fair, in my opinion, this one didn't, so mission accomplished, I guess. I think it's safe to assume that in DIY, there is a prevailing idea of communal existence, and the thinking that the profits of labor should be shared by all, and that in a general sense, no one individual has more or less power than or over another. In keeping with that thinking, all bands on a show, also DIY venues, photographers, flyer makers, or anyone who puts work into a successful show, should see some money from that show. Now, I will say this. I don't know if I would count as a show photographer. I've taken pictures at shows before, and I've put them up. I haven't given bands any of the pictures because, they haven't really asked for them yet, but I do have an open policy that if I take pictures of a band and you want the original files, I will give them to you because why not? I would never think of charging for that. That's not what I do it for, I do it because I want to, number one, and I do it because it's fun, and that philosophy extends to a lot of the things that I do, to this podcast. It's not monetized. There's no sponsors on it because hardly anyone watches it, but I do it anyways because it's fun. And with my blog, there's no ads on it. I don't charge people to read the articles. It's not like on a Patreon paywall or anything like that because I just want people to read it and I want people to appreciate it. And that's it. That's it. I just want to write and I want people to read it. And obviously down the line, in my professional endeavors, which I don't consider this to be a professional endeavor, I consider this to be purely a hobby. Again, something I do for fun. And I don't seek really to make money out of my hobbies. I get $100 from YouTube like maybe once a year. and that's it. I don't care about that. Again, I chose option two. I work full time so that I can have money to put into my hobbies, to pay for this camera that I have, the lenses that I have. Well, okay, I bought this light when I was in college, so I don't think that would count. But, all the money that I've sunk into, gear for my YouTube channel and this podcast, I do that not really expecting a return on investment. I don't see it as an investment, really. I see it as new things to be able to do fun things with, and that's really it. But I feel like I'm getting off topic. Where am I? Even if it's just a fraction, the gesture is what matters. And don't misunderstand me, I'm not naive. There are so many factors that go into bringing a band to town, especially bigger touring bands. There are guarantees, sometimes minimum requirements for venue size, or PA, or pre-sale tickets that have to be met, and many times these fall on one specific person or venue. Not every band exists in the hey, call your friend who lives in a random city and see if they'll throw us a show and buy us Little Caesars and let us sleep on their floor style of touring. Not to mention, if we're trying to build an inclusive and expansive scene, not every genre of music that has a local presence shares the same beliefs when it comes to the value to oh my god. Not to mention, if we're trying to build an inclusive and expansive scene, not every genre of music that has a local presence shares the same beliefs when it comes to money or value of performance. See, I'm already starting to show my jadedness. And so my comments before about, being a small local band and playing locally, that doesn't really apply to touring bands. I do feel like, touring bands that are on the road for a prolonged number of stops, they should be paid for that because touring costs money. Maybe you have to rent a van, you have to find somewhere to sleep. Maybe you are going to a place you don't know anybody. Again, that's not going to let you sleep on their floor and buy you pizza, and you have to do that out of pocket. I feel like that, they should be compensated for that at least. But if you are a band, which this band particular that I'm talking about, I'm sure they have toured at one point or another, but at the very least and again, I could be wrong, I don't know, I wasn't really paying attention that closely to begin with, but for most of this year and probably even half of last year, they were not touring. Probably because, it's so expensive and because, this person has this sentiment on being paid. I don't know. Anyways, we're moving on. But yeah, I agree that touring bands should be fairly compensated, But again, knowing that you're not a big time band, part of a big time label, which I mean, even big time bands, part of big time labels, even popular bands don't make hardly any money off of touring. Even popular bands, unless you're like, I don't know, friggin' Billie Eilish, Celine Dion, which I mean, she's not even touring anymore because of her illness, but friggin' Adele, unless you're that big, you're probably not even going to be making money off of touring. Like, even like the biggest bands in metal probably aren't making all that much money off of touring. Who was it? Architects, who just went on tour with friggin' Metallica. They probably didn't make any money off of that tour. They might have even lost money off of it. Because for the most part, unfortunately, what bands get money from is merch sales. And this goes for big bands on big labels down to teeny weeny bands playing in bakeries here in Jackson. That is, unfortunately, the case. So it's like, this isn't new. I think it's not new and it's not unique to Jackson or smaller bands is what I'm trying to say, I think. But yeah, moving on. I hope I'm making sense. I'm trying to formulate thoughts and then read this at the same time. Essentially, all that needs to be said is make sure to pay their local bands. Let them do what with their money, because it is their money, what they want. They want to give it away or keep it or buy a cheeseburger, whatever, it's theirs, give it to them, and then let them handle it from there. If you take nothing else away from these writings, let it be that. It is incredibly important when growing or supporting a fledgling community to instill in them that they have value and are appreciated and noticed One way to do that is to show them that their work has some financial reward, even if it's a pitiful sum. You wouldn't expect a forest to grow when you can't even water the roots of one tree, which, on the one hand, I agree. I do feel like artists should be paid for their art. However, we live in a capitalistic society that doesn't value art. The rise of AI art should show you that. People will eat slop happily. They don't care how it's made. They don't care if there's actual heart behind it, right? So, because we live in this capitalistic society that doesn't value art, this is kind of just the way it is. And it might be kind of, I don't know, unhelpful to say that, oh, this is just the way it is. It can't be helped, yada, yada. But at the same time, it's just the way it is. It kind of can't be helped, yada, yada. So it's like, on the one hand, yes, I agree. On the other hand, our society isn't really set up for that. So I don't really know what to say. It's unfortunate. I hate it. I wish it weren't that way. But until we go back to, I don't know, in Greek times where people were patrons of the art and they had their own little painter goblin living in a shed in their yard, what what can you do? And I mean, even then, how many rich people are there to have painter goblins living in sheds in their yards? It's an unfortunate situation all around. But at the same time, going back to, you can't even water the roots, or what, you wouldn't expect the forest to grow when you can't even water the roots of one tree. Forests grow without human intervention. Forests have been here long before we have been here, and they will be here long after we're gone, presumably, depending on how, humanity ends. But let's say just the timeline of, one person living. There are really old trees on this planet, and although people can live to be up to 110 years old, there will be trees older than that have grown without people's intervention. I say that to say that art will continue to be made, money notwithstanding. So it's I personally don't think bands not being paid is what's gonna destroy the music scene here. However, that's just my opinion. Again, I'm not an artist, I'm not a band, I don't tour, I don't perform places. Maybe they have a different opinion on the matter, and I'd love to hear about it if that is the case. But to me personally, I think, there's always going to be kids in their bedrooms with their guitars strumming away, making music just because it makes them happy. There's always going to be kids with their 10-year-old Wacom drawing tablets, doodling in their rooms just because it makes them happy. There's always going to be kids on Wattpad and AO3 and fanfiction.net writing just because it makes them happy. That will never change, Art for the sake of creating art, I think, will always happen. But again, given that we do live in a capitalistic society, there are going to be a lot of artists and a lot of creatives that choose the option one of having stable jobs, which, by the way, I've probably been switching up option one and option two, so this analogy doesn't even really work probably, but there are going to be a lot of artists and creatives that choose the option of having a stable job and income and the ability to support themselves over the pursuit of their artistic endeavors, and as a result of that, some of their art will fall by the wayside. That just kind of is the way it is in the capitalistic society that we live in, where it values money over art. That's just the way it is. Again, unhelpful, but... And I feel I'm not talking directly to this person when I say this, as I have, I guess, learned a little bit more about this person. They've been in this for practically as long as I've been alive, so I don't think I have to tell them this, but for other people who may not be as aware of this, or maybe you are, or I don't know, I'm just saying my opinions, that's really it. I'm not trying to say hey, upset person, this is how it is, when they probably already know how it is, so just putting that out there. So if you've read this far and you're asking yourself, what the hell is this guy talking about? I just go to shows, I pay my cover, I see my friends play, and I watch a touring band. What is this guy on about? I guess I should have started there. There's this idea in DIY and punk music specifically that if there's a band from out of town on a bill, that band are the only ones getting any money that comes to the door that night. Which I don't know if this is a prevailing thought throughout the punk and DIY communities throughout the country and the world. This situation really is the first time that I've been introduced to this concept. So I can't really speak on that, but moving on. Let's see. The agreement that someone local finds local bands, books a venue, makes flyers, and everyone promotes the hell out of the show. And when the touring band gets there, it all hopefully goes well, and the money you paid at the door will be enough to make sure they can buy gas and food and get them through the next day. So at the end of the night, after all the money is counted, and whoever was running the door, usually a combination of members of the local bands or possibly someone from the venue, if there was no guarantee or pre-made arrangement, the money would be split evenly, and the locals, usually, would give some or all of their cut to the touring band. Which I didn't know that was the expectation. I didn't know there was an unwritten rule that, the local bands were just supposed to give the money that was made, their cut to the touring bands. I didn't know this. If this is the expectation, this is new to me. Moving on. While never explicitly stated or expected, this was and is the generally agreed upon practice. So again, this is mostly an unwritten rule type of thing, as I'm understanding it. Where am I? Some local bands may take a little for themselves to pay for a tank of gas since they hauled their gear, or to kick back to the drummer who missed a shift to play the show, or maybe to fix a blown speaker since all the bands that night used just the one amp, but most of it goes to the traveling band. It is how it worked for me when I was doing the small amount of touring I did. It is kind of how it always worked for everyone I've ever met in DIY and punk, especially if there was no guarantee. Sorry, for those not in the loop, some bands have a minimum amount of money that they charge to play that the person/venue/agent who books them agrees to and guarantees will be given over sometimes upfront before they even play. Except, at some point, it changed. The scenester who booked the show is now controlling the money, and there was, or became the idea that all the door money goes directly to the touring band. Period. End of discussion. Not to mention that the door cost is kept as low as possible as a sort of promotional technique to attract as many people as possible, and since the locals aren't being paid anyway, there's no need to charge more to have to share. There's no need to charge more to have more to share. I could write another 2,000 words on how backwards this way of thinking can be, but again, not the time, not the place. It isn't this idea that I have a problem with at all. In fact, I still usually support it. Rather, it is simply the fact that the local bands no longer are given the choice. When I was touring, I wanted the local bands I played with to understand how grateful I was that they had thrown me a show. Some nobody from some other place. Their friends or fans owed me nothing. If I knew that someone took some power from them in my name, I would have been royally pissed. It was, and still is, important to me that the bands I play with, whether local or from out of town, know how much I value them, and one of the ways I can show them that is by paying them all an equal sum for their performance and work they put in to make sure we all have a good show. If the show is a bust and we only bring in $20, everybody's getting a $5. It's the gesture. I don't believe touring or traveling artists have good shows on a DIY or punk level without a lot of hard work from the local bands, so the locals should have a say in what happens with the money from a show. Which, on some level, I do agree with that. I agree that, ideally, everyone on a bill should be paid evenly from the cash that is made that night. But I think what the issue is that a lot of these shows get booked on handshake agreements. There's nothing written down. There's no contracts involved. And while that does simplify a lot of things, it does also lead to a lot of flexibility in these bookings. So, do I think having everything, written and contracted out would make the situation better? Probably not. But I think because of the informality of the way these shows are booked and played, that leads to potentially even some miscommunications and misunderstandings with pay. And obviously, that's not good, but at the same time, I don't really know what can be done to remedy that. So, yeah, moving on. As much as we say we don't do it for the money, but we need money to survive, so, and advertise it as an idea that is, that, oh my god, and advertise it as an idea that is that we would profit from our art. What on earth? And advertise, and as, oh my god, I can't read. I don't know if I can't read or if this is written weirdly. And as adverse an idea as it is that we would profit from our art, music is literally the only art that thinks about itself this way, which perhaps you're right. Now that I think about it, now I think of, the arts in general, if you're a musician or an artist and you're selling out, that is kind of like cardinal sin of the art world. So I understand where they're coming from in that regard. Which, literally the next line, or sell ourselves out, lol at this idea in general. It's the idea that we are a community and we are equals. Damn it, that still comes off as a little jaded. C'est la vie. Now, do I think this could have used a second pass, an editor perhaps? Yes, however, this is a small little zine, so it's fine. I get, the general idea from what they're trying to say. And also, that has kind of shown me that Wednesday night's events were not as surprising. They were surprising to me because I had no context for them, but to pretty much everyone else I've talked to about it, it wasn't surprising at all that this happened. Apparently this beef, which I guess it's a beef, has been building for some time now. So now that I've read this, that was written presumably earlier this year, in maybe January or maybe even December of last year, I can see that this has been building up for some time now. So the fact that what had happened on Wednesday, which again, if you know, you know, if you don't, I'm not going to tell you. You're just going to have to figure it out on your own. If you can, you won't be finding it out from me, because again, it's not my story to tell, but we're moving on. Given what happened on Wednesday, now that I have read this, which I'm really glad, because I see these at Hammer and the Tool shows all the time, and probably some other smaller shows. It never occurred to me to pick one up, and I'm glad that I have. And also, you might see me, well, you won't see me, but you might see my writing in one of these zines, which I don't think these are distributed digitally. So pretty much, it's very lo-fi. It's very analog. So if you want one of these zines, by the way, just to diverge from the topic at hand, if you want one of these, they're distributed by the Landmass Library, and up until recently, you can only find them, I believe you can only find them at shows, but now there's an actual, physical, box where you can get these. I believe it's at Urban Fox's. I think so, and it's been recently put there. So if you want any one of these zines or any other ones that, the Landmass Library or Psychic Hand Tapes creates, then that's where you can find them. And again, I don't think they're distributed online anywhere, but you might see me in the next issue. Maybe. Probably. I think so. Honestly, that'll be so great, because, when I was, again, diverging a little bit more from the topic, when I was a little artist kid, just posting my drawings on DeviantArt, the thing that I wanted the most was to be invited to do a zine, because, to be completely honest, I've made a zine before. I've made one. I totally forgot that I literally made one before. I don't know how I forgot about that, but yes, I made a zine before. I made an art zine before. I contributed all of the art to it. I had some writings in there. But the thing that I wanted the most as a little artist child was to be invited to be in a zine, or apply to be in a zine and be accepted. So to be invited to write for Burning Fight, honestly, tremendous honor. Thank you so much, Zach. I hope that whatever I cook up is going to be some heat. But I know it will. I'm confident in my abilities as a writer. Anyways, back to the topic at hand. I agree a lot with what this person is saying. I think that you know, bands should be paid. I don't really have many thoughts on the current pay structure. I think it is a little bit maybe too informal. However, given the informality of the scene just to begin with, that's probably just gonna be how it is. But, there comes a time, and I'll leave it here because I'm literally at 2 hours, but there comes a time at every artist's life where you have to choose option one or you have to choose option two, and you have to be okay with that. You can switch at any time because, again, these aren't set in stone. I mean, this is your life that we're talking about. You can make whatever decisions you want. You can pick option one, you can live a comfortable life doing a regular job, and maybe not have as much time for your creative pursuits as you want, but still be able to support yourself in this capitalistic society. Or you can choose option two, be an artist full time, make only enough money to barely support yourself, and you have to be okay with that. And I was given those options as a kid in college, and I chose option one, and I am fine with my decision. Again, I was incredibly lucky that my option one stable job pretty much aligns with my option two creative pursuits. Not a lot of people can say that, especially musicians, because there really aren't a lot of normie full-time jobs that involve the creation of music. So you don't have to monetize your hobbies, but if you do have creative pursuits that you want to be more than hobbies, you're gonna have to rough it for a really long time. That's just, again, it's just the way it is. As unhelpful as it sounds, it truly is just the way it is. It's unfortunate. I don't know what it's gonna take to fix it. Not the situation from Wednesday because, again, goofy. But just the situation of option two, you know. Something really interesting that I saw. I get emails sometimes, not for the news team, but I'm part of a few different email lists at my job, working at the news station that I work at, and one of them was, one of these, I don't know what you would call them, but basically they're these, I don't know, organizations that like rank states based on various metrics. And Mississippi was the last state in the union when it came to being an artist. We ranked the lowest in several metrics when it came to things like jobs in the arts, arts programs in schools, spending on the arts, the amount of grants for the arts. We're literally the worst state to be an artist in. I don't know if this person knows that. I would hope they would. It probably feels like it to them. And it is truly the case based on all these metrics organized by whatever this organization is. So, the fact of the matter is, if you are an artist and you are choosing option two and you live in the state of Mississippi, it's gonna suck. But you have to be okay with that. And if you're not okay with that, you have some options. You can either do the work to make it not suck, which unfortunately, means legislating, which that's not something everyone wants to do. That's not something everyone's capable of. And it's also, hard. Being a lawmaker, I don't know, feels like a losing battle, to be completely honest. Doesn't even matter which side of the aisle you're on. It feels like a losing battle no matter what you're doing. So it's you can make your case in the state house to make make life for artists better, but we're also in a red state, and red states in general don't really tend to value the arts at the state level. So at the state level, you're kind of screwed. On the local community level, I mean, maybe there is space, there is room for a nonprofit to be established that would support, the DIY scene here in Jackson. I'm not aware of any nonprofits doing anything like that, that provide stipends or grants or anything to DIY artists. I'm not aware of anything like that happening or anything like that existing. However, if you're watching this, if you've made it this far, 2 hours into this episode, good lord, literally the longest one, if you made it this far and you are a burgeoning young, I don't know, non-profiteer. I don't really know what you call people who run nonprofits. I'm going to call you a non-profiteer. If you are a burgeoning young non-profiteer and you have any amount of love for the scene and you want to see it be better, there is a gap in the market for a nonprofit that would support the scene, monetarily, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about money, you know. When I was working at a nonprofit, I did see, not for music, it was for education, but I did see that, the process for applying for grants, you need a really good grant writer and you need someone, or maybe this is the same person, someone to find the right grants. Something that I have learned being in the nonprofit space for a year and a half is that there is a lot of money just waiting to be given away, just sitting somewhere, waiting to be given away to a nonprofit, whether or not they deserve it or not. So, there could be a deserving nonprofit that supports the community here, again, monetarily, that would provide grants and such to bands. It doesn't exist. There's a gap in the market that can be filled. If anyone wants to fill it, because it certainly won't be me, after working in a nonprofit, I never want to do that again. For a number of reasons, but I don't want to do that again. There is space for that to happen. And the person who wrote this piece and the person who, I'm talking about the same person. The person who wrote this piece, I don't know if they would be willing to do that. Clearly, they feel very strongly about it, and you would think someone who feels very strongly about it. Listen, to be fair, I don't know this person personally. I've never spoken to them in person. I've never formally met them. So I don't know what they're doing behind the scenes. If they are doing something like I just described behind the scenes, then honestly, I want to shout it from the rooftops. I want to make people aware that you are trying to make the Jackson DIY scene a better place monetarily for artists. But until I find that out, you're just going to have to be jaded, I guess. And again, I have no ill intentions or hate or bad feelings for this person. I'm really trying to understand where they're coming from. And this piece and this zine definitely helped me understand where they were coming from. So for that, I guess I am pretty thankful. Again, thank you to Zach for giving me this. I don't think that was his intention with giving me the zine. I think he just wanted me to have it. And I did read through all of the pieces, and there is some interesting stuff in here. There's 3 essays. Nope, there's 4 essays. Something about, there's 4. Let's see, 1. That's 1. 2, that's 2. There's 2. Let's see, that's a poem. It's 3. Yeah, I think there's 4 essays in here and also a collection of poems. Yeah. So, again, thanks, Zach. I'm looking forward to writing something that will hopefully be a heater for the next edition of Burning Fight. But this episode has gone on for very long. So, I hope, I don't know what I hope, to be completely honest. I hope we can come to a happy medium about the situation. I hope that it can, which again, I've heard from both sides, so I don't know if this is ever going to happen, but like I said in my Instagram story that I posted the day after, I just want things to be copacetic in the scene once again. It does not help us to be splintered like this. So I'm hoping that, I don't know, we can all just kiss and make up. As, very kumbaya and flower child as it sounds, kiss and make up. That's all I want, which again, given the nature of the situation, probably won't end up happening. It seems like all of these frustrations just came to a head last Wednesday, and whether or not those relations will be repaired, I have no way of knowing. So that's all I have to say about that. I've been talking for far too long, It is 7. Oh my god, I haven't even made dinner yet, and I'm seeing a movie at 8:35. I'm seeing Challengers. I'm seeing the Zendaya polycule movie. So I gotta hurry up and make this food. Oh god, I don't even know if I'll have time. Good lord. Oh well. Anyway, this has been the 78th. Good lord. See, it's been too long. This has been the 28th episode of the Running My Mouth podcast. I have been your host, Erin. Thank you for allowing me to run my mouth. Follow me on Twitter, because if you aren't following me on Twitter, you're only getting half the story. And that's it. And I'm sorry this episode is so long, but I had a lot of thoughts. Hopefully the next episode won't be this long. Anyway, toodaloo, I guess.